it has been a month now that Caitlin has been out, and we still don't know when she will be returning to the court, if she will be returning to the court this season.
The WNBA has a problem, and that problem is Caitlin Clark not playing in WNBA games. Now, what all does this affect? The ratings are plummeting. Guys, there's ratings for a couple of these games that are eye-poppingly bad.
The WNBA just got slapped with a brutal reality check, and it's spelled life without Caitlin Clark. Ratings are nosediving faster than a Stephanie White-coached team trying to execute a last-second play. One groin injury later, and the league's historic growth slogan suddenly feels like something a desperate marketing intern scribbled on a coffee-stained napkin. And now, WNBA owners are getting restless. No, scratch that. Furious. They're staring at those TV numbers like, is our billion-dollar dream really this fragile? The big question? Can this league survive without its one true ratings magnet? Be honest. When Clark's out, is anyone rearranging their weekend to watch the so-called other stars? Let us know down in the comments below. Let's go.
What are you going to do about it, Kathy? If and when Caitlin Clark returns, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to allow her to come back and get mauled? Are you going to allow her to come back and continue to get fouled? Because if we see what's going on here with the ratings, the owners have to see. And the owners are thinking to themselves, the bubble might be bursting. This bubble might be bursting, and Caitlin Clark being out for over a month is the catalyst to the burst.
Here's the cold truth. The league had one surefire ratings formula this season: Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese. That was it. That was the entire marketing plan. Chicago Sky versus Indiana Fever. You didn't need $1 million brainstorming session or flashy ad campaigns. Just put the two most talked about names on the same court 5 times, and boom, instant money machine.
There was one matchup that this league can consistently rely on to produce massive viewership numbers. One matchup: the Chicago Sky versus the Indiana Fever. Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, the league's two most noticeable names on the court at the same time. In fact, they relied so heavily on this matchup, they put these two teams against each other 5 times this season.
But here's the problem. If you don't protect your stars, they don't stick around. Clark's been sidelined for over a month with a groin injury, the kind that demands real recovery, not the slap some tape on it and hope approach the WNBA seems to think is fine. Reese has been out for a week and a half, so when this past Saturday rolled around and the league's golden matchup had neither of its golden ticket players on the floor, the ratings collapsed. We're talking lowest numbers these two teams have seen since Clark stepped foot in the league. And I'm not talking slightly down. I'm talking rock bottom. Couldn't even match last year's mediocre numbers. Out of sight bad.
I feel bad for Caitlin Clark. She come out and said on Sue Bird's podcast that she's feeling the pressure of not playing in these games. And that Fever Sky viewership fell off the map. All right? A massive fall off from earlier in the year. No Caitlin Clark, no Angel Reese. Now, Angel Reese is back injury? Question mark? Nobody's exactly sure what the hell's going on there at all.
Now, the numbers don't lie, and they paint an ugly picture. The first meeting this year with both Clark and Reese was massive. 2.7 million average viewers on ABC, peaking at 3.1 million. That's 115% higher than last year's ABC average. And it wasn't just the star power. It had everything. Clark's foul drama, her triple-double, Chicago getting demolished, and that infamous league investigation that had everyone talking.
Essentially, Angel Reese gets the ball, Caitlin Clark goes over, does a hard foul, commits a hard foul on Angel Reese. She falls to the ground. After that, Angel Reese gets up. She's feeling super spicy. She's charging at Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark is walking away. Aaliyah Boston steps in and kind of stops Angel Reese. Courtney Vandersloot also steps in.
The second meeting stayed strong, even with Clark out. Prime time on CBS at 8 p.m. pulling in 1.92 million viewers. still one of the most watched WNBA regular season games since 2001 and the 8th largest in more than 20 years. But the third meeting, that's when the slide began. From 2.7 million to 1.9 million, then crashing to 1.5 million. That's 1.2 million people saying, "Nah, I'm good," and never coming back for round 3. And yeah, I called it out at the time. That 1.5 million number was the lowest Fever Sky viewership since last year's 1.53 million. Then came Saturday's disaster. Same primetime slot, same network, same matchup. But without Clark, they didn't even break 1.4 million. Try 1.3 million, meaning over 500,000 viewers flat out bailed. From May 22nd to August 10th, this marquee matchup has shed 1.4 million viewers. In TV terms, that's not a slump. That's catastrophic. Networks panic over drops half that size. Advertisers panic. And you'd better believe Kathy Engelbert is panicking, though she'll never admit it publicly.
Several more weeks pretty much puts Caitlin Clark to coming back at the very end of the regular season. If you look at the Indiana Fever's schedule right now, they only have 12 games left, and there is exactly 4 weeks left in the regular season. And the craziest thing about this last groin injury with Caitlin Clark is how it's been covered. The day after she had the groin injury, she was listed as day-to-day, and then a couple weeks after that, then she was listed to being out indefinitely.
Because here's the unfiltered truth. Without Clark, national interest in the Fever and the WNBA nosedives. Fans aren't tuning in for Stephanie White's playbook doodles. They're not showing up for slow, sloppy basketball. And they're definitely not eager to watch the three-ring circus that is WNBA officiating.
Is there any chance that the WNBA, that Kathy Engelbert saw some of the ratings that I'm about to show you now and said, "Hey, Indiana Fever, can you do us a favor? Can you do us a solid? Can you just tease a Caitlin Clark return, kind of boost these up a little bit? Can you just dangle a Caitlin Clark return in front of the fans' faces, try to boost these ratings up a little bit?"
So what's the league's play? Desperation mode. You start hearing whispers, "Hey Fever, maybe tease a Caitlin Clark return," just to bump the numbers. Dangle the possibility without delivering. It's straight from the PR survival manual. Keep the audience hooked even if it's smoke and mirrors. But here's the catch. Clark's injury isn't something you rush unless you're fine with re-injury or a long-term issue. And maybe, just maybe, if the league had done its job protecting her from the constant targeting, dirty hits, and blatant no-calls, we wouldn't even be here. But no. Instead, the refs treat her like an uninvited walk-on at an open gym.
Guys, I got to tell you, in 2 of these other games I'm going to show you, it is bad back in WNBA territory of where they were like 3 years ago or 4 years ago. I saw these ratings and was like, you got to be joking. It's not a joke. Yeah, pay us what you owe us.
And don't think this only wrecks Fever games. Let's look around the league. Sun vs. Sky pulled 180,000 viewers. Dream vs. Mercury? 160,000. If the WNBA's growth was as explosive as the league office claims, those games would clear 400K easily, maybe 500K. But without the Caitlin Clark stimulus package, they can't even sniff 200K. That's what Clark is, a walking economic boost for the entire league. She plays, numbers soar. She sits, numbers crater. And the league can't claim they didn't see this coming. The red flags were there from day one. Your most valuable ratings asset is taking harder shots than an NFL wide receiver and getting fewer whistles than a spam caller in airplane mode. No calls for landing space violations. No calls for arm grabs on drives. No calls for blatant hacks at the rim. You think if Clark got the same whistle Paige Buchers enjoys in college, she'd still be sidelined? I do. The Fever would probably be sitting as a top 3 seed, and we wouldn't be talking about a ratings freefall in August.
That if you fail to protect your stars, Caitlin Clark, if you fail to protect your stars, sometimes they might not be around all the time. Sometimes they might get nicked up. Sometimes they might get dinged up. And sometimes they might get a soft tissue injury that takes weeks, if not months, to correctly heal. And that's the predicament the WNBA now finds themselves in. Caitlin Clark has been out a month and 1 day.
Instead, the bubble's leaking air fast. Owners are watching those charts and feeling the walls close in. You don't need an NBA analytics team to see it. From 3.1 million highs to 1.3 million lows, with NBA TV games barely breaking 200K, the slope is steep and ugly without the one player the league should be guarding like crown jewels. And here's the really scary part. This isn't just about right now. Every week Clark sits, casual fans drift away. They find something else to watch. And once that habit's gone, good luck getting it back. Especially when the replacement product is a lineup of players most casual viewers couldn't identify if you gave them multiple choice answers. The WNBA's marketing strategy is Clark and other people. And newsflash, the other people part isn't selling.
We have officially regressed. We have went way backwards, which is slightly above the average national TV viewership for Fever games this year. But it also is the least watched of the 8 Chicago and Indiana games since 2024. Look at this, folks.
Networks don't want to hear just wait until she's healthy. ESPN, CBS, ABC, they pay for consistent numbers. If they see viewership evaporate every time Clark's not suited up, they start questioning how many games they'll commit to next year. If you're a network exec, why invest in a product that collapses whenever one player's out? That's not sustainable, and it sure doesn't give the league any leverage in the next TV deal.
And just yesterday, she was listed as a game time decision for today's game against the Dallas Wings. And then after practice yesterday, Coach Stephanie White basically came out and said, like, no, Caitlin Clark hasn't even been practicing. So they changed it from a game time decision to her being out. This has been all over the place.
The owners aren't blind to what's happening, and the league sure isn't either. But instead of addressing the real issue, actually protecting the one player who's propping up the entire operation, they're pulling the oldest hustle in the sports PR playbook, the fake game time decision tease. It's the equivalent of dangling a piece of steak in front of a starving dog while knowing full well the plate's empty. Fans have seen this act before. It works once, maybe twice, before the crowd catches on and decides they're not falling for the con again. Nothing tanks credibility and ratings faster than making people feel like you've strung them along just for a quick hit of attention.
And I get it to a certain extent. The fans, the media does not need to know every little thing that's going on with Caitlin Clark's injuries, especially a star player like that. We will never know all the information, nor should we know all the information, and that's actually good for Caitlin. It protects her for when she does come back on the court. She can't be targeted. Teams can't use a certain injury or ailment against her if people don't really know what is going on. But the reporting of her timeline in general, there has been no rhyme or reason to what has been shared about it.
And here's the ugly truth for the WNBA. This season, they didn't just market around Caitlin Clark. They made her the entire hook. Every promo, every primetime slot, every highlight package, every merch drop, she's the headline. Without her, you're left with teams that can barely pull the same audience as a mid-tier high school boys' state championship game streaming on a local channel. Not even exaggerating. Some of those games get over 250,000 views. Meanwhile, the league has been beating the historic growth drum all year. Record-breaking ratings, sellouts, merch flying off shelves. But take Clark out of the equation, and the so-called growth deflates faster than a cheap beach ball in August. This isn't league-wide growth, it's Clark growth. Just like the 90s weren't a magical boom for all of basketball, they were the Michael Jordan effect. Big difference.
The WNBA has a problem. Because it seems with Caitlin Clark out, not only are the Indiana Fever games losing their steam, not only is the marquee matchup against the Chicago Sky losing its steam, that's the marquee matchup this league has to offer casual fans. You go up to anybody in the streets, name 2 WNBA players. One is always going to be Caitlin Clark, and the second is usually going to be Angel Reese. Maybe you'll get a Sabrina, maybe. But usually it's going to be those 2. Maybe you'll get a Paige, maybe. But usually it's going to be those 2. 85% of the time, those are the 2 names you're going to get.
Now let's talk about the part nobody in the WNBA front office wants to admit, the long-term fallout. If Clark's sidelined for another 2 weeks, that's 2 more primetime duds. 2 more weeks of casual fans building new viewing habits that don't involve the WNBA. 2 more weeks of people flipping to baseball, the NFL preseason, or literally anything else. Sure, some will come back when she returns, but a big slice of that audience will be gone forever. And once a sports league loses casual viewers, it's like trying to get toothpaste back in the tube. Then we have the playoffs looming. If Clark's return doesn't immediately blast ratings back to those 2 to 3 million highs we saw in May, what's the excuse going to be? You can't keep saying, just wait, momentum is coming. If the whole year has been built around her, the postseason should be the jackpot. If it's not, the entire growth narrative gets blown to pieces.
Cathy Engelbert, this is what happens when you don't protect your superstar. This is what happens when you don't protect your cash cow. This is what happens when you allow gambling to run rampant in your league. I just had to throw that in there because that's what's taking place. This is what happens when you have referees call fouls one way for one individual and not the other way for the other individual.
And let's stop pretending this injury came out of nowhere. The targeting has been relentless. The officiating, a joke. Clark has been hacked, grabbed, shoved, and taken out midair all season, without a whistle in sight. Landing space violations ignored. Arms pulled on drives ignored. Straight-up body checks at the rim waved off like they never happened. You don't limp for weeks from a harmless tap. This groin injury is the direct result of cumulative damage the refs let happen. If she'd been officiated like the star she is from day one, she'd be healthy right now. The Fever would be surging toward a top seed, and Cathy Engelbert would be on every camera crowing about ratings, instead of hiding from the fact the league's product is bleeding viewers by the week. And Angel Reese being out doesn't help either. The league struck gold with that Clark versus Reese rivalry, but they let both players get chewed up by the physical grind. Now the so-called marquee matchup is just another mediocre team facing a bottom feeder without either of their stars, pulling TV numbers so bad network execs are checking tee times instead of the box score.
Every team is fighting for a spot in the playoffs. Caitlin Clark should not be thrown back into any mix if she doesn't have significant practices under her belt before she goes into game speed. You can try to simulate game speed as much as you want in practice. You will never be able to. Game speed is game speed. There's also a lot more adrenaline, all of these different things pumping when you're playing in front of a sold out crowd that the Indiana Fever do every single night. If I'm their coach, she needs to practice for at minimum a week. At the minimum, she needs to be doing everything in practice for at least a week before you throw her back in the mix.
And make no mistake, the Fever without Clark aren't just less appealing to networks, they're less competitive. Without her floor spacing, defenses can load up on 1 or 2 predictable options. Half-court possessions stall. Turnovers pile up. The offense looks like it's running in quicksand. That's not fun basketball for anyone outside of hardcore Fever diehards, and casual fans sure aren't sticking around for it. So what's the short-term fix? Keep dangling the hope. Show Clark courtside, smiling, signing autographs. Leak clips of her in light shooting drills so fans start whispering, maybe next game. It might buy you a temporary ratings bump. But long-term, this league has to either fix the officiating and protect its stars, or admit that its entire business model lives and dies on whether Caitlin Clark is in uniform.
We already know what happens when Caitlin Clark gets back out on the court. Teams play defense on her differently. They play extra physical with her. There's all of these different factors that come into play. That's why I'm sort of leaning to the point of maybe Caitlin should be out for the rest of the season. Maybe this season is just done for her. Maybe it doesn't make sense for her to come back into the mix if the Fever aren't contenders. Are the Fever contenders at this point? I'm just not so sure. Do you risk another injury that can again compound and turn into something else down the line?
Because here's the truth the PR team won't say out loud. What they're calling historic growth is actually a rickety house of cards. The second Clark isn't on the floor, the ratings fall like a rock. That's not growth, that's dependency. And when a business is completely dependent on one asset, it's only one bad month away from full-on panic mode. Owners see it. Networks see it. Advertisers see it. You don't need a fancy analytics department to understand that if losing one player can sink your biggest matchup by over 1 million viewers, you've got a structural problem. It's Caitlin Clark or bust. And right now, without her, it's bust. One injury has exposed the WNBA's entire house of cards. And unless they start protecting their investment, networks and fans will move on faster than the league can say historic growth. Can this league survive without its one true ratings magnet? Be honest, when Clark's out, is anyone rearranging their weekend to watch the so-called other stars? Let us know down in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss out. Click the video on the screen, and we will see you in the next one.